Some writers are just a product of their time. And then every once in a while, you get these rare figures who don't just write in an era, they basically write the era itself. John Dryden was one of those guys, a true literary giant who became the defining voice of Restoration England.
But how does that even happen? How does a single writer manage to grab the political chaos, the cultural vibe, and the actual soul of a nation and put it down on paper? Okay, let's get into it. Let's unpack the incredible story of John Dryden.
So, to really get Dryden, you have to get the world he lived in. We're talking 17th century England. And this was not a quiet, peaceful time. Oh, no. It was an age of full-blown revolution, of restoring a king, of complete reinvention. And Dryden? He was right there in the middle of all of it. The thing about him is, he was a triple threat. He wasn't just a poet, or a playwright, or a critic. He was a master of all three. He completely dominated the literary scene, mixing his amazing creative work with this super sharp analysis that basically told a whole generation what was good. And just look at the world swirling around him while he worked. His career took off right after a brutal civil war. He saw the monarchy make a huge comeback. He even witnessed London burn to the ground in the Great Fire and then rise from the ashes. This wasn't just background noise for him. This was the fuel for his fire.
And eventually, he got the ultimate seal of approval. In 1668, he was named the very first official poet laureate. Now, this wasn't just some fancy title. It was a statement. It cemented his place as the nation's #1 literary voice, the guy whose job it was to tell England's story back to itself.
All right, let's start with his first big role, the poet. But Dryden wasn't writing poems about, pretty flowers or quiet landscapes. He was a poet of power. And he used his words like a weapon, wielding satire as a razor-sharp tool for political commentary. And his most powerful, most dangerous weapon? It was a poem called Absalom and Achitophel. Now, on the surface, it looks like he's just retelling a story from the Bible. But really, it was a genius, not-so-subtle takedown of a huge political crisis happening at the time over who was going to be the next king. He pulled this off using something called political allegory. And you have to understand just how risky this was. I mean, England had literally beheaded its king just a few decades earlier. To openly criticize the royal family was basically treason. So by hiding his critique inside a Bible story, Dryden found a way to jump right into the dangerous political arena without, getting his head chopped off.
So check this out. This is the key to the whole thing. The biblical King David, that's actually King Charles II. His rebellious son, Absalom, that's the Duke of Monmouth. And that sneaky, treacherous advisor, Achitophel, that's a stand-in for the Earl of Shaftesbury. All of a sudden, this old story becomes this gripping piece of investigative journalism, all in verse. It's brilliant.
Okay, so he's a master of the political poem. But Dryden wasn't done, not by a long shot. He was also a total titan of the London stage. He took these huge, epic stories from history and remade them with this new, raw, emotional power. And his masterpiece for the stage was All for Love. He took the most famous love story ever, Antony and Cleopatra, and he decided to tell it again, but on his own terms. He wanted to focus on the obsessive, all-consuming, destructive power of their passion. Now, you're probably thinking, wait, didn't Shakespeare already do that? And yeah, he did. But Dryden deliberately took a different approach. He stripped away all the magic, all the extra characters, and all the globetrotting to create something much more intense, a tight, almost claustrophobic psychological drama about what was going on inside their heads. And he did it all with the sheer force of his language. The dialogue is so poetic and raw, it just cuts right to the heart of their relationship. You don't just watch these two people fall apart. With Dryden's words, you actually feel the crushing weight of every single impossible choice they have to make. So we've got the poet and we've got the playwright, but this next one, this might just be his biggest impact of all. See, Dryden didn't just write great stuff. He created the rule book for how we should judge what's great. He basically became the father of English literary criticism. His big work here was called An Essay of Dramatic Poesy. And don't picture some dusty, boring textbook. He wrote it as this lively conversation between four friends, all debating what makes a play good. And by doing that, he laid out the standards for drama that would last for generations. So what does this all mean? Well, he was laying out a blueprint. He argued that plays need a moral point, they need to be focused, following what are called classical unities, which means the story happens in one place, in one day, with one main plot. And you can totally see him using his own rules in All for Love, where he takes Shakespeare's sprawling epic and boils it down to just the final desperate hours of the lovers. Okay, so poet, playwright, critic. That's a heck of a resume. But let's be real, the guy lived over 300 years ago. Why should we still care about him today? What's his lasting legacy? Well, it all comes down to these three massive pillars. As a poet, he perfected the art of political satire. As a playwright, he gave tragedy this incredible new psychological depth. And as a critic, he literally gave us the tools and the vocabulary to talk about literature. The man didn't just succeed in one field, he completely redefined three of them. And that's really the key, isn't it? Because if you peel back all the layers, the 17th century politics, the fancy language, you find he's writing about things that are completely timeless. The battle between love and duty, how power corrupts people, the clash between what we want and what's right. These are struggles that are just as real for us today. And all this leaves us with one last big question. Dryden used his art to comment on, to criticize, and maybe even to change the powerful people of his time. It really makes you wonder, when art goes head-to-head with power, who actually gets the last word? The ruler